Good morning, everyone. I'm Riley King, and welcome to the Riley King Newscast right here on the Riley King Network. Let's begin. First up, federal agents set up immigration checkpoint on Interstate 93 in Woodstock. Let's take a listen to the video from WMUR News 9, Siobhan Lopez.
Traffic on...
It's Nissan's bottom line model year-end event. Get big clearance savings on the last of our 2018s. Featuring Nissan's latest available tech. Hurry into your local Nissan store for great offers like this.
93 in Woodstock slows to a stop as Customs and Border Protection agents ask people if they are U.S. citizens.
I have a legal right to remain silent about that question, okay?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I don't detect any foreign accent, so I'm assuming that you're a U.S. citizen, but I don't know yet.
So now the presumption is accents.
That's a good indicator.
Asma El-Houni is a U.S. citizen. She recorded cell phone video of her encounter today and says she chose to not answer the question because she feels it is intrusive to be questioned without any suspicion of a crime being committed.
Mind you, I'm a Muslim, I wear hijab, and that obviously to me is him thinking that I am, that someone like me would be from another country, and just because I don't have an accent, I'm probably a citizen of this country.
If the person did have a foreign accent, then one would assume that that person would have been detained if they elected not to answer the questions of Border Patrol. That's profiling. That's not something that we allow in this country.
The ACLU is looking into whether or not the checkpoints happening in New Hampshire are being done appropriately.
Regardless of whether individuals decide to comply with the checkpoints and answer those questions, the detention is required to be brief.
The agent and El-Houni talked back and forth for several minutes. He told her that it is his job to find out whether or not she is a citizen. El-Houni asked the agent if he is okay with questioning people.
I've had enough experience to realize what we apprehend here and what we interdict. I'm privy to that information.
Now, according to Customs and Border Protection, 22 people without legal immigration status were arrested at that checkpoint between May and June. No word yet on whether or not any arrests were made today. Live in studio, Siobhan Lopez, WMUR News 9.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. AAA report, Boston ride sharing twice as expensive as car ownership. Let's take a listen to the video from WCVB, Boston.
Check this out. One room of beautiful North American hardwood flooring installed for just $9.99. That's right. And this isn't just any hardwood. This is genuine Armstrong hardwood, the most trusted name in flooring. Call National Floors Direct at 888-400-FLOOR.
Catching a ride has arguably never been easier. Just take out your phone, open your rideshare app of choice, and hop in.
It's really handy for, especially late at night. Usually if I'm going out on a Friday or Saturday night.
But if you're thinking about selling your car and relying on Uber or Lyft as your only means of transportation, you may want to hit the brakes.
Ride-hailing provides a terrific option for many people, but for those who are driving the average number of miles, about 11,000 miles a year, it's not the most cost-effective option.
A new study by AAA claims that city dwellers that rely on ride-hailing services as their primary mode of transportation and ride around 11,000 miles spend on average more than $20,000 a year. In Boston, that number jumps up to more than $27,000 a year, the highest in the nation.
We have a lot of congestion in Boston, and so some of the rides might be a little bit slower.
AAA says those city dwellers that ride the average 11,000 miles per year would save more money if they owned a car and drove themselves. But in a city like Boston, which is known for expensive and minimal parking, combined with terrible winters that can damage your car, many residents say they're sticking with ride-sharing apps and public transportation to get around town.
My life is pretty much localized to a couple of city blocks. I don't own a car. I don't really see the need for one when you live in the city.
Now, Uber released a statement saying there are over 1 billion cars in the world today, and championing the idea that each of those cars should be used by just one person comes with tremendous cost and consequences for all of us. Lyft was also critical of this study, saying that it failed to take into account shared rides, which is 1/3 of Lyft's business.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. USM political science professor weighs in on Manafort. Cohen. Let's take a listen to the video from WMTW News 8 Maine.
The Landing at Cape Elizabeth. Living your life meaningfully in the comfort of your home. Permanent and respite stays available with award-winning quality care. Ask us about a Maine Bridge to Home respite care in an assisted living setting. Call The Landing at Cape Elizabeth today.
This has been a very bad day for President Trump.
USM political science professor Ron Schmidt says today's legal decisions are historic.
After Watergate, after the last time a president was named as an unindicted co-conspirator, Congress tried to react by imposing new limits on how much power money could have in politics.
In a New York courtroom, President Trump's former lawyer Michael Cohen admitted to violating campaign finance laws. Federal law limits donations to campaigns at $2,700 an election, and Cohen admitted to paying $130,000 to Stormy Daniels at, quote, the direction of a candidate. While not naming Mr. Trump, he was the only candidate Cohen was working for at the time.
If what we're talking about is that the President of the United States knowingly instructed a subordinate, an attorney, to violate campaign finance laws in order to influence the outcome of an election, that means that your voice and my voice was suppressed.
In Virginia, former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort was found guilty by a jury for 8 financial crimes not related to the campaign. Those charges did not touch the center of the investigation if the Trump campaign colluded with Russia, an investigation that the president has called a witch hunt and a disgrace.
If you're a supporter of the president and his policies, you have to admit that the kind of allegations being made today are significant.
Cohen's prison sentence will be as much as 5 years, with his sentencing expected for December, and Manafort's lawyer says he's reportedly evaluating all of his options as he's facing decades in prison. As for what's next for the president and campaign finance laws,
we will see changes as a result of today, but I'm not going to try to bet what they'll be, and I think they'll probably lead to some unintended consequences.
in the wake of today's decisions, many have asked if the president himself could be charged. Now, the odds of an indictment have grown unlikely as the Office of the Special Counsel told the president's lawyers that they do plan to follow the Justice Department's views. It's that a sitting president cannot be indicted no matter the evidence. However, Special Counsel Mueller does have other options available. How likely those are do rely on a multitude of evidence and political factors. Reporting in studio, I'm Mary Kate Mannion, WMTW News 8.
Okay, and there you go on that video and that report. European market edge lower aimed U.S.-China trade talk. Injects shares climb 6%. European stocks were slightly lower Wednesday morning as investors continued to monitor trade talks between the world's 2 largest economies. And here's a look at the market right now. What we know about the man charged with killing Molly Tibbetts. Let's take a listen to the video.
Propane dealer, you are not obligated to use them. We're Shardelli Fuel, family owned and driven to treat customers right. We can help you make the transition to Shardelli Fuel. Expect more. Visit cfuel.com for new customer incentives.
A first-degree murder charge was filed today in connection with the disappearance of Molly Tibbetts, who was last seen jogging in Brooklyn, Iowa on July 18, 2018. A complaint and affidavit names Christian Bahina Rivera, age 24, who resides in rural Poweshiek County, and he has been charged with murder in the first degree. Dozens of law enforcement officials from local, state, and federal agencies were involved in the investigation after the disappearance of Molly Tibbetts. A body was discovered early this morning in a farm field southeast of Brooklyn, Iowa. The identity has not been confirmed, however, we believe it to be the body of Molly Tibbetts. A complaint and affidavit, which will be provided to you, will provide the details and of allegations against Mr. Rivera. Charges were filed in the Poweshiek County District Court. The case will be prosecuted by the Iowa Attorney General's Area Prosecution Division, and first-degree murder carries a penalty of life without the possibility of parole. During the investigation, we reached out to the public, as you well know. And during our neighborhood canvass, we came across an individual that had security cameras. We took those cameras. He was kind enough to give us the footage from it. And through that, we were able to identify a vehicle that we believe belonged to Mr. Rivera. We conducted a lengthy interview with Mr. Rivera, and during that interview, he tells us that he sees Molly running and was able to come upon her, approach her, and while he was interfacing with her, he actually tells us that he ran alongside of her or behind her. And then at one point, he tells us that Molly grabbed a hold of her phone and said, "You need to leave me alone, I'm going to call the police." And then she took off running. He in turn chased her down. And then he tells us that at some point in time he blacks out, and then he comes to near an intersection in which we believe he then placed Molly.
Okay, and there you go on that video. And that does it for the Riley King Newscast right here on the Riley King Network. I hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you back here later on today for another newscast. And I'll have a news report coming up in a little bit. Goodbye, everyone.